Okay, so apparently we are live. Hello on this Adult Beverage Fridays. Things that I do every week. Every week we do this program. The format of the program, again, for the 100th time or 1,000th time I've said this, 30 minutes I talk about the topic, and then we do the Q&A section after half an hour, and then it's free for all. You can ask anything you want. But typically people say, oh, you're like rambling during the live stream. It's like, please, people. This is a live stream. I don't have a script. I react to the comments. And so, yeah, I invite you to do it yourself. Do a live stream yourself and see how easy that is to actually be very firm on what you're going to say with almost scripted accuracy when people are making comments. So no, it's free for all. And if you want the shorter videos with a very, very clear topic and direction, then you go to the Thursday videos that I release and not the live stream. So I just want to make that clear. So, because every video I have to hear this over and over. So just to take that out of the equation here. So welcome, folks. So our topic tonight is Meta. That's not the topic on the title, but I just saw that. Zucking Meta. Facebook is zucking Meta because they steal your metadata. Wow, how fitting. So Zuckbook, of course, is well known for taking the metadata out of your photos so they can track locations and every single thing every piece of metadata they can track, they do track. So, it's pretty appropriate. Zuck you, Meta. Yeah. So, yeah. Exactly. It's like, yeah, we're the spy company. We suck the metadata out of everything you post on social media. So it's very, very appropriate. Very appropriate. So how are you doing, guys? Could they have come up with a more evil name? Have some feta. So the topic actually is about location, but it was just interesting. I guess it's in the news. I actually missed that. Maybe because I haven't been following Facebook. Because, can I tell you why I don't follow Facebook? I mean, I don't really say much about Zuckbook here on YouTube. I don't know what it is. If I talk about Zuckbook in some negative way, nobody watches the video. Nobody watches the video. It's like I can say every evil thing that Zuckbook is, and nobody watches the video. So it's like I kind of got fed up. It's like I wonder if it's planned out. They have some connections with YouTube, and YouTube is helping them out. I don't know. Maybe they're calling anything said badly about Facebook as hate speech, and they're like filtering it out because they do it to me. I mean, they filter every truth I say. And maybe they don't like it when I say Zuck. I don't know. Often I've been demonetized when I've said Zuck in my broadcast. So anyway, we don't care. I don't really make hardly any money from advertising, so it doesn't really matter that much. But it's just irritating facts. But the other interesting thing, which is kind of related to our topic, and that is every time I talk about Apple, there's a whole army of people here to shut me up. They don't want me to talk badly about Apple. It's like you can't say anything bad about Apple and nobody watches the video. That's same kind of concept here. I don't know if this is planned out or just the reality is there's so many people who are such big Apple fans that they can actually round up the energy to go out on the internet, or maybe they're paid. I have no idea. Maybe they're paid by Apple to go around the internet and make sure that that no social media, no negative thing is said about Apple in social media. Actually, that makes sense. If you're the largest corporation in the world, yeah, what is that to spend couple $1,000,000 to do that every year? I mean, that's like drop in the bucket, and just say, okay, we'll hire some people to scour the internet on some of these popular stations, popular platforms, and look for what did I say? Anti-Apple people and then, zuck them up. So maybe that's what it is. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, the truth is the truth. Some people just don't like hearing it. They focus so much on this. One guy was like focused on my statement about the M1 chip, and didn't even watch the rest of the video. So it's like, what the heck are you talking about? I mean, you actually missed the point of the video. The point of the video is the privacy part, not the M1 zucking chip. Who cares about the M1 chip? The M1 chip could still be the best chip, and it wouldn't make any difference to my point. That doesn't make any difference. I'm just saying, I'm weighing it. Do I want the technology for productivity versus what I know are privacy risks? But going back to the topic that we're actually going to talk about, the problem is we need to balance out the privacy risk for all the platforms. And I'm talking hardware platforms here. I'm not talking about Facebook. Is Facebook still called Facebook and then Meta is the parent company? I presume that's how they're going to do that. Like Instagram, WhatsApp, they're all owned by Meta. But Facebook is still Facebook? Otherwise, they're going to confuse everything. It's kind of like Alphabet owns Google. Okay, whatever they want to do. Okay, so the topic is the location tracking. And this is important because I get asked this question. I made a big statement about, the Apple tracking location in the last video, which is very unpopular. The video is very, very unpopular. It's ranked pretty low compared to my other videos. So it's in a day and a half, I think it barely squeaked by 6,000 views. So it's a very, very unpopular video. The good videos by now would be at, triple that, close to 20,000 views. So this one is like stuck at a third of that. So it is what it is. I'm going to tell you the truth. You don't like it, you don't like it. I can't help that. But it's not fair to say things about location with Apple and not give you the big picture of location tracking. Differences between Apple, Google, and Microsoft, the three major hardware platforms. Suffice it to say, Linux doesn't count in there because Linux doesn't track your location. So, yeah. So if you want no location tracking, go to Linux. There's still location tracking using Wi-Fi triangulation, but we'll explain that later. So anyway, the main difference is that Google and Apple do what is called Wi-Fi scanning. That is collecting the router information, Wi-Fi routers every Wi-Fi router in existence. It tracks all that, and then it has a database of locations per router. And this is very, very old. I remember a hacker, Rankar, Sami Rankar, I believe his name is, and he lives right around here too. Anyway, he actually hacked Google and got into that database. And that database is well known because it's part of the Google Location API, Geolocation API, the application programming interface. And you actually send MAC addresses of routers. And if you send a MAC address of routers, the signal strength of where you are of the routers near you, if you send them at least 2, the database will respond and give you a computed location of where you are. So that's the math. So the algorithm is already doing that. All you have to do is give it 2 routers near you, give it the signal strength, and the formula will return your exact GPS location calculated based on this Wi-Fi scanning map. So Wi-Fi scanning, again, I said in my last video, and I got to keep repeating this over and over because people don't get it. Wi-Fi scanning is where a device with a GPS, so let's say you have one of these phones. I have a phone here. Okay, let's say you have one of these phones. This is a Pixel 4a. So you have one of these phones, and this one has a GPS. So as long as this is on, this is scanning the network. And what it's doing is it's called promiscuous mode. It goes into the Wi-Fi and says, give me all the, it actually sends out a probe. It actually announces itself, says, I'm looking for Wi-Fi routers. That's what this thing is saying. I'm looking for Wi-Fi routers. Wi-Fi routers respond every few seconds and say, I'm here, I'm Wi-Fi router, home, I'm Wi-Fi router, grocery store, I'm Wi-Fi router apartment complex, and this is my MAC address. And then this then takes the Wi-Fi MAC address, which is the serial number of the Wi-Fi, and says, what is the signal strength to one of those? And then this then stores it with the GPS location and then sends it over to Google and sends it over to Apple, depending on what phone you have. So if it's an iPhone, it sends it to Apple. If it's Google, it sends it over to Google. Okay? So this is called Wi-Fi scanning. So Wi-Fi scanning is the collection of Wi-Fi router addresses. Now, again, your device sends out the Wi-Fi scan of all the Wi-Fis near you, and that has your device serial number. So they know which device is sending that information. Okay? Apple specifically uses that to track Find My Phone. They use the serial number of the device together with that announcement of either your GPS position or later on a different location tracking. So Wi-Fi scanning, strangely enough, is only done by Apple and Google. Now you're going to wonder, why is that? Why didn't I mention Microsoft? Microsoft is in the title. The reason is these devices have a GPS. So you can't do Wi-Fi scanning without a GPS, because the formula is scan the Wi-Fi, find your current GPS position, outdoors, because it only works outdoors. So this Wi-Fi scanning is not useful indoors. It only works outdoors. So when you're outdoors, let's say the postal worker delivering your mail outside, right? You still have postal workers? We hardly have any. We only get our mail like once every 3, 4, 5 days. Our post office is closed hours a day, at least 2 hours a day, because they don't have staff. So when they go on a lunch break, there's nobody there. But anyway, unconnected topic. So when your postal worker is walking around with their iPhone or Android, they're in fact doing the Wi-Fi scanning. So it's crowdsourced. So hundreds of people walking down your street are actually scanning for Wi-Fi's every single day, maybe thousands of people, depending on how busy your street is. But even a small street, there could be hundreds of people walking by doing Wi-Fi scans every fucking moment. Okay? Not only giving out their location, but actually collecting the Wi-Fi routers near you. Now, some of you will say, "Oh my gosh, I mean, that's my Wi-Fi router is revealing its location. I better do something to my Wi-Fi router." Well, it doesn't help, because it's not just your Wi-Fi, it's your neighbor's Wi-Fi, it's everybody else's Wi-Fi. If you stop your own Wi-Fi router, it doesn't have any influence on your neighbor's Wi-Fi. It's pretty insidious. There's nothing we can do about it. So anyway, the point is that Wi-Fi scanning is a deadly thing that is done for location tracking. For one thing, it's permissionless. It happens constantly, and it's not based on any permission. And as I already talked to you about on the Apple side, you can't turn it off. In fact, that's one of the reasons they can use it for Find My Phone, because it's very effective at locking the phone to a serial number, where you say, well, you can't like steal the phone and claim it's yours, because it's not going to stop emitting the location. So you better not steal an iPhone and an Android. So that's Wi-Fi scanning. Now, as soon as they make this database, then a different kind of location tracking can evolve now. Now, a lot of the location tracking is actually done by the browsers. Browsers, folks. Location tracking on every device, including the mobile, is done by the browsers. And how is that working now? So most of the location tracking is done using Wi-Fi triangulation. So I did explain this fully in many, many videos. I'm just giving you kind of a different explanation. So the browsers are usually doing the location tracking, since that's how you relate to a website. So because of that, what happens is a device like Microsoft computer, which does not have a GPS, is able then to say what is my location, on my computer. But you go to the website and you go to Facebook, Facebook spots your location. How does it do that? Because Wi-Fi triangulation is built into every browser. It's built into Chrome. It's built into Safari. It's built into Brave. It's built into every single browser. So Wi-Fi triangulation is a feature that was added so that when you go to a website, then they can spot where you are through the Wi-Fi triangulation. Again, how does Wi-Fi triangulation work? The whatever app, the browser or a dedicated app, there's a dedicated app on Windows called Wi-Fi Analyzer that can do the same thing. It looks for the Wi-Fi's around you. Then all you have to do is, if you have the data for all the Wi-Fi's near you, all you have to do is go to Google, send them a REST API request, meaning a JSON file, and you give them a list of all of the MAC addresses of routers and their signal strength, and it will return your computed GPS position. So that is done by the geolocation API of Google, and then Apple has an equivalent of that. Okay, so geolocation is something unique to basically to Apple and Google, because they're the ones with that database. Okay, they're the ones with that database. Now, companies like Microsoft don't really have that database. So the reason is there's no GPS on a computer, so they can't do a Wi-Fi scan. They're not equipped to do that. A company called Skyhook Wireless, which I've talked about many times, they did collect Wi-Fi scanning information, and maybe they still do, by sending out cars to drive all over the world, and those cars then do the scan. So that's being done by some companies like Skyhook Wireless back in the day, and whoever's doing it today. And then that information is then sold. That information is then sold. Now, how do they sell that information? Not necessarily as Wi-Fi triangulation. The trick that they've done, well, I guess they can do Wi-Fi triangulation with that. And they may sell it to companies who want Wi-Fi triangulation, and they don't want to buy the services from Apple or Google. So, but typically companies like Skyhook Wireless, what they do is they come up with a reverse IP lookup database. And that means they connect the location to the IP address. So anytime you're using some app here, you're using Yelp, let's say, or you're using the Weather Channel. Actually, the Weather Channel is already proven to do this. And the Weather Channel then gets your Wi-Fi triangulation data to know where you are by app permission. And then it gets your current IP address. That's stored by the app. And then the app then sells that to companies like Skyhook Wireless, which then sells a database. You can buy those databases. You can rent those databases. $500 a year, something like that. Yeah. So if you're a big company or even a developer, that's no big deal. $500 a year, you can afford to do that, and then you can find out everybody's location just from an IP address. So Wi-Fi triangulation then it's a little bit different because it needs to access some database, typically done by Google or Apple or an external party. And Microsoft doesn't really do that. It doesn't have access to that. So Microsoft likely has to buy those services from somebody else or rent those services from somebody else. Facebook relies on the device Wi-Fi triangulation from here. So they also don't necessarily get that information, although they can get it if you run the Facebook app. I think they were trying to do that before too. Except I think they're being denied access now by all these devices, so they can't actually do network scans directly from the Facebook app. They were doing MAC address scans and all of that. Facebook was like being extremely evil, trying to collect the data themselves. So in any case, the way that the operating systems have organized the authority for location tracking is that Wi-Fi triangulation, which requires that you send the Wi-Fi router MAC addresses and which means you have to scan for Wi-Fi routers and the signal strength, that is only done with permissions. So that kind of location tracking can only be done with permission. So if you deny the permissions, then no Wi-Fi location tracking can occur. However, Google and Apple don't require that because they're doing the Wi-Fi scanning procedure, which is not bound by permissions. Wi-Fi scanning occurs all the time. This is why somebody tells me which one is the safer machine, Google, Apple, or Microsoft. Sorry, Microsoft is safer. Not because Microsoft is somehow some benevolent company, absolutely not. But they just don't have the infrastructure for that. So Microsoft for location tracking is much, much safer. Much. So basically, if you have a Microsoft Windows computer, as long as you don't give permission for location on your browser, how is it going to get a location? Most of those location tracking require some database or, Microsoft will try to get your location from the IP address, reverse IP lookup. But they don't have direct access because the device doesn't have a GPS. So they don't have actual direct access to location. Their source of information for location is indirect, whereas Google and Apple have a direct knowledge of that. Now, computers, and especially desktops, don't move. Certainly laptops may move, but not as much. But just to give you a comparison, a MacBook, and a MacBook cannot do a Wi-Fi scan as well. So let's be fair. Why can't a MacBook do a Wi-Fi scan? Because it doesn't have a GPS. So no device without a GPS can do a Wi-Fi scan. They can only do Wi-Fi triangulation, okay, which is more limited and requires permission. So basically, the main danger to Wi-Fi scanning is just these things, because they have a GPS. Okay. So in all fairness, the culprit is really just these. Okay, because you can deny permission for location in those platforms. Now, there's a little bit different though, something different with a Mac versus Windows. You see, the Wi-Fi triangulation in Windows, typically you need to have a browser or some other app to do Wi-Fi triangulation. I don't actually know how to do Wi-Fi triangulation from within the OS itself. I don't know if an OS feature allows Wi-Fi triangulation directly. However, Mac OS does. And this is the problem. Even though you have a Mac, you can't really stop the Wi-Fi triangulation happening on the Mac, and this powers Find My Phone. In fact, it's quite possible because they did it in the past, and I don't know what the current version is, but in the past, Apple put it on the chip itself of the devices. So Wi-Fi scanning, Wi-Fi triangulation was done on a chip. I don't know if it's that's done today. Somebody who's an insider would know, but they probably won't tell me. So now you understand the difference here. In terms of safety, definitely Microsoft Windows is much safer. Definitely. Because the device just doesn't have that. It doesn't have that capability. And corporate users who use Windows will probably balk at that if they found that that's being done, and they have to publish that because Windows is published with APIs and everything. The Microsoft SDK. You can look in there and see if it's on there. I haven't looked lately. I haven't done any Windows programming in a long time. Probably, when was the last time I programmed in Windows? 8-9 years probably. So I'm not up to date. But at last time there was no such thing. So what this tells you though is that the Mac OS is a little different. It's pretty insidious because there's no way to really remove this, and we don't even know, because there's no way to look at the source code if this is a problem inside the actual Mac OS itself or it's on a chip. I don't really know. I mean, how do we know? We don't, you know, we don't know if it's on a chip or not. On an Android, it is not on a chip. It is not on a chip. On an Android, it's not. It's on the Google code that is inserted by Google on an Android. Now, how do I know this? Because Android open source doesn't have that code, and I looked at Android open source and doesn't have that. So it means that the code itself, the Google code, is talking directly to the GPS device in here and doing the logic for Wi-Fi triangulation internally. And that code is not in Android open source, which means that if you replace the programming here from Google Android to a open source Android, you don't have that kind of tracking. Everything is done by permission using Wi-Fi triangulation, which you can turn off. So that means a de-Google phone is extremely fucking safe. Very, very safe, because you don't have any, if you have a de-Google phone, there's no tracking other than the permission you give. There's no Wi-Fi scanning. There's actually Wi-Fi scanning on the code, but it can't send the Wi-Fi scan to Google because there's no Google in Android. It doesn't communicate with Google, so there's no way to send the Wi-Fi scan information to Google. So it kind of will dead end in there. So what does that tell you? It tells you that, just generally speaking, you ask me what's safe. Some of you are asking, what tablet should I use that's safe? Well, clearly, Microsoft wins. Again, not because they're not trying to spy on you, they are, but they just don't have the capability to do it because they were never in that realm. The Mac Windows wasn't designed like that. Windows is not a protected OS like iOS, Mac OS, and Android. All apps in Android run in a virtual machine. The apps themselves don't have any real access beyond being a virtual machine. Apple does the same thing. But when we're talking about a Windows computer, you actually have access to everything. In fact, you can replace Windows programs if you have the permission to it. You can actually wipe out a Windows program, and that's what hackers do, and replace it with your own. And because of this, it's pretty much impossible for Microsoft to restrict somebody being able to find out what you can do on Windows. I mean, you know, every trick in the book is known on Windows because, you know, it's all open. Most things are even controlled in the registry. That's why you can shut down Cortana and do all that. So Windows, a lot of Windows haters, but from a practical point of view, the reality is, outside of Linux, Windows is safer. Now, why am I even talking about Windows when there's Linux? The reason is the form factor. Linux only works on certain devices, and Linux does not really have a competitive tablet like Microsoft Surface Pro or even those convertible tablets. They don't really work too well on Linux. So maybe some are working now, but for a long time they haven't been. And for that reason, when somebody asks me, you know, they want an interface that's similar to, you know, as close to Apple touch based. And unfortunately, Linux is not really touch-based. It's a computer. You use a keyboard, laptop, mouse. It's not touch-based. So that's the reason I'm trying to explain this. This is why it's very difficult to do Linux phones, because Linux wasn't intended to be touch-based. Okay, so that's the take. So it's kind of surprising, yes, that Windows will be the safest. There is actually a lot of things, instructions. I told you how to remove the spyware from Windows because they try to spy on you even with keystrokes, but it's very easy to turn it off. It's very easy to turn it off. There's actually an app that will do it for you. So you don't even have to go figure it out. You just run this app and you just check the boxes and you're done. And I'll do that in another video or live stream. It's very simple. There's forget the name of the app, but it starts with O. And then your Microsoft Surface will then be fairly safe as long as you do a local login and don't use your Microsoft ID. So as long as you don't use your Microsoft ID. So can you do that on Windows? Absolutely yes. You do not need a Microsoft ID. You can log into Microsoft ID, get something from the store, and then disconnect and not be on Microsoft ID. So yes, you can do that. So therefore, in terms of options and safety, yeah, Windows. The fact that Windows is kind of behind on certain things is actually a good thing for us. So there we go. That's just to give you a little bit of background. Anyway, this live stream is sponsored by my friends at Linode. Linode, as you know, is my main supplier of cloud services. I have tons of servers on Linode. A lot of my VPN stuff runs on Linode. Lots of my servers, my Braxmail product, all that runs on Linode. So I go to Linode because not only from the performance and from the fact that it's actually way cheaper than Amazon AWS, but they're really the best in customer service. Very, very, very friendly and just very supportive. They're there to support you. They're very easy to reach. So I'm able to really get some good results from Linode. So if you go to linode.com and /Rob Braxman, they're going to give you a $100 credit that you can use for 2 months, and then you can rent servers from Linode and play around and set up Linux servers and such at no cost. If you want to try it out, if you're on some other platform and you want to make a website, you can set up a website for a little $5 a month on Linode. So go check them out. They're a good company. I don't have many sponsors. I only have 2 sponsors. Linode is a long-term sponsor, and I'm not big on sponsors. So anyway, I'm not big on sponsors. I get offers for sponsorships hourly. When you get to be as big as my channel now, my channel is getting a little bit bigger. This channel is now the #1 privacy channel on YouTube. There's no privacy channel larger now. We're not large enough, but but at least it's a little larger, and I get a lot of sponsorship requests. The problem, guys, is I don't want to sponsor a company that I don't believe in. I mean, it's so little money for me that almost it's not even about the money. What money do I really get from a Linode or my current sponsor Start Page? Very little money, guys. It's a joke. Okay, it's not worth my time, to be honest. But they don't ask much of me, and it's more because I'm supportive of what they do. And if it's both companies are doing things that will help you, so and are helping me help you by offering me services. So I like those kind of limited sponsorships. I don't really take anybody else. My goodness, like PIA probably emails me daily, asking for sponsorships, and then you get all the different ad companies. Like, okay, fortunately, guys, I don't need to do that because my sponsor is myself. I sponsored you with my company, with my site Braxme, where all my store is, where you can buy products. So my company, Braxmobile, sells you the products, the Brax routers, the phones, the Braxmail service, the VPN routers, all that come from my company, and other services that we'll be providing in the future. So because of that, there's really no need to worry about sponsorship. So how's Starlink? Yeah, I wish I had Starlink, actually. Yeah, I didn't sign up for Starlink fast enough, so I don't have it. But I did want to try it out, just to have some flexibility. So it's just another way to get internet, in a different method. I don't care if I have cable and Starlink at the same time. Would just be good to know so I can test it. But I don't have it. I don't think there'll be much difference between Starlink and normal internet from a privacy point of view. It's just an ISP like everyone else. Okay, it's no different than any other ISP. So you can VPN it like anything else. I don't really think there's any difference in their ability to spy on you. Will they spy on you less on Starlink? Have no idea, but it doesn't really matter. You have to assume they do. You have to assume that. Sometimes they're required by law. Sat phones. What is the benefit of a sat phone? The main benefit of a sat phone, commentator. The main benefit of a sat phone is you can't run apps. So, well, actually, some sat phones have apps, but in general, the non-Android sat phones, like the Iridium Go, which is just a phone, doesn't have any apps. Therefore, it's safe from apps. It's safe from Google spying by default since it doesn't have that. But if you're talking about government listening into you, well, obviously, for example, Iridium. So if a government wants to spy on you, let's say a 3-letter agency, they probably have a hookup directly in one spot, which is Iridium in San Diego, and they can just connect to the, since all traffic goes back to the Iridium company, every single one. Worldwide traffic. It doesn't matter you're in a boat, you're in a house, whatever you are with satellite, is centralized communications. Therefore, somebody unencrypted can track your traffic if a government wants to. So from a government point of view, there's absolutely no safety with that. You're better off using an app and running, some app like Signal. You're better off with that than running satellite communications thinking that's even safer. It is not any safer. You might as well use encrypted voice over IP on Signal. That's much better. So yeah, so make the choice of satellite for a completely different reason. That's because you're in a boat and you don't have access to an ISP. That's a logical reason. Otherwise, no particular safety in doing it. It's kind of an expensive way of doing it. Let's see. Oh, somebody asked me this. What about the Tesla phone? Did anybody ask about the Tesla phone? Did anybody ask about the Tesla phone? By the way, if you use Signal with family, let's say you use Signal with family. I told you Signal's okay to use with family, right? Because they already know your phone number. You don't have to reveal your phone number. Ben asked about the Tesla phone. Anyway, when you're using Signal, you actually forget you're using Signal. So, like family members were sending me photos, and my messaging app is Signal, not the built-in messaging app on Android. And my family then, without even knowing it, they're sending their photos through Signal, since the entire family is on Signal, because Signal chooses if you're going to be if your target doesn't have a Signal account, it sends it through SMS. But if your family is on Signal, it never sends it via texting, which is kind of cool. It's like you don't even have to think about it. And even when you call on phones or you ring them or do anything with family members, text, it's going through Signal pretty much invisibly. They don't even know they're on Signal. So because of that, it's kind of nice because it's very little friction. So for family, so Signal is not only messaging, it has voice, it has video. And it can be your texting app. Therefore, it pretty much disappears. If you're using your, let's say your Android, you don't even know you're using any of that. So you forget because all your text traffic goes to Signal, so it kind of disappears. So because of that, it's very well constructed. Session is very well coded. Yes, Session is probably the most secure with no metadata app that I've ever seen. It's a little harder to use though. Session is not something I can easily convince family members to use. But I would probably say if you're talking to people you don't know, yeah, session is definitely very, very, very good. So I just don't like, you know, doing Signal with people I don't know. I don't want to give them my phone number. Okay. Is it dumb to use Google Fi? Google Fi is nothing more than T-Mobile. So stop worrying about Google Fi like it's something different. Are you familiar with RDP Guard? That's just an outgoing firewall. RDP Guard, it's just incoming firewall, sorry. You can block RDP from your Windows settings. You don't need anything special to do that. Just block firewall it. That's already built in. Just say block RDP app. Then RDP app will never run. You can use also Glasswire to stop it. And then will never run. So anyway, somebody asked me about a Tesla phone. So since I already mentioned, I'm going to answer that. There is no Zucking Tesla phone. Okay? There is no Tesla phone. So stop asking me that. Okay? Let me rephrase that. There is no phone made by Tesla. Tesla does not make phones. However, somebody took the Tesla name because Tesla is, you know, Nikolai Tesla. Nobody could probably block the use of the name for other purposes. Somebody designed a phone in Tesla style. It's like a Tesla styled phone as a prototype. This has nothing to do with real life. It's just a standard Android. So let's not even talk about that. It doesn't really relate to anything, okay? So it's not an Elon Musk phone. So forget it. It's okay? So forget the Tesla phone. So so it doesn't exist. I mean, it doesn't exist in real life, and we don't need to care. It's, you know, the guy said it's going to connect to Starlink and all that. It's like, that's BS. Okay? It's nothing to do with anything. Okay, so see what was the other question again? I was gonna, one of the super chat questions, the first one. Is it dumb to use Google Fi? Okay, let me talk about Google Fi again. So Google Fi is being sold to you as, hey, you're gonna get, you know, you're gonna get a new carrier with Google Fi. Google Fi is just an MVNO, meaning it's, you know how Ryan Reynolds bought a big chunk of Mint Mobile, and then he's putting out the YouTube ads how, you know, he's doing Mint Mobile now because he has so much money. Well, that's what Google did. Google said, okay, we're going to be an MVNO as well. We're going to start up an MVNO just like Mint Mobile, and we're going to call it Google Fi. It's an MVNO. An MVNO is just a reseller. They resell the carrier infrastructure. They basically just rent it, and then and that's it. So the infrastructure used by Google Fi is nothing more than T-Mobile. Okay, so when people tell me, is your stuff going to work on Google Fi? Is your Google phones, it's de-Googled, so you know, is it going to work on Google Fi if it's de-Googled? So Google Fi is just T-Mobile. So you put the SIM card in there and it's T-Mobile. Okay, so maybe Google's planning on building its own network in the future, so they're starting with an MVNO right now. I don't know, but you see, you can't really, starting a carrier is no minor thing, and the reason is you have to have a lease on the frequencies. So the FCC, you know, will offer those frequencies to certain companies. There are only 3 companies now. T-Mobile acquired the frequencies used to be owned by Sprint. So T-Mobile now has more frequencies, probably more than most, because it took the frequencies that used to be assigned to Sprint. So it has the channels that used to be used for CDMA, and as well as the GSM, Now Sprint has all of that. I mean, T-Mobile has all of that, and Sprint will now be gone. But they won. They not only took the customers, but they also have the frequencies, and that's why these deals to buy carriers, multi-billion-dollar affairs. I mean, they're, you're basically making free money from those frequencies. Okay, so CDMA is dead. There's no CDMA. There's just CDMA carriers because they have different rules. So the CDMA carriers were Sprint and Verizon, and they stood out because they were weird. They did different things. Whereas AT&T and T-Mobile, was more of the world standard. So the rest of the world used the same frequency bands and basic architecture as AT&T, T-Mobile. This around the world, they're consistent. Verizon is the only one that's different. Verizon is the only one that's different. Sprint and Verizon. Now there's no more Sprint. So Verizon is the only one left. So for this reason, a lot of phones don't work with Verizon, but they work with everything else. And Verizon is very restrictive with phones, and it's it's crazy. Do I like TikTok? Hell no. You want me to be spied on by the Chinese? Suck them. Yeah, I know I look Chinese, and I better go back to China, but then I won't be able to find my way back because I can't open my eyes. Yeah, I got that. Windows 11 any good? I'm trying to download it, but I'll see if I already got it. I tried downloading it. Should be fine. The internals of Windows 11 sound pretty much the same. So yeah. What about the Filipinos? What about I'm Filipino, yeah. So what? Filipinos are not spying on you. Filipinos don't spy on you. They just answer your tech support. So, it doesn't matter who you call, whether it's American Express or whatever. They all go to a Philippine tech support company. It's like incredible. The world changed. Yeah, so all the tech support in the world now is done in the Philippines. So, yeah. Windows 11 is not that bad for privacy. No. You can't shut the same things in Windows. And I got to go check it out. But so far, I don't think it's architecturally much different than Windows 10. So, so far, Windows 11 is disaster performance-wise. Interesting. Especially with AMD chips. I believe that's a bug. The AMD chip thing is a bug. So hopefully somebody will fix that. Will China invade Taiwan? Don't ask questions like that. Right to repair. You mean we're talking about Apple? Yeah, people are what? How to fix old tech? Come on, guys. I mean, are you a Luddite? Get new tech. Just get the right new tech. Tech that doesn't spy on you. Guys, if you want absolutely no spying, then learn Linux. Linux is not as easy if you are not very techy. You probably aren't suited for Linux. You have to have some tech skills to be on Linux. You have, if you know how to do a few things on DOS, command line, Linux is fine. It's the thing about Linux. For some of you who are not, let's talk about the more techie of you. The thing about Linux that's great is Linux is very consistent. Once you learn how things work in Linux, it's very consistent, and you start to understand the infrastructure, and it's actually quite simple. It doesn't have some of the tricks that you find in Windows. In Linux, just to give you a little education if you want to learn about it. In Linux, everything is a file. It's a file system. Everything. actual files, directories, drives, things like ports. These are conceptual issues now. TCP/IP ports. What do you call this? Pipes. These are technical terms which relate to Windows. In Windows, these are all different processes, different ways for processes to communicate. But in Linux, they're all very consistent. Everything is a file, and because of that, it's once you learn it, it's kind of easy to find out what the problem is. The problem with Linux, guys, is that there's too many distros and everyone's trying to like one up the other guy and come up with a new distro, and all they're doing is confusing people. It's very, very confusing. It's part of the fun, I guess, that you can go run some other distro and then the Linux itself will look a little different. The problem is this: these distros have to distribute applications. Unlike in the Apple App Store and places like that, or Android Google Play Store, there's a central repository for applications, the App Store. Well, in Linux, each distro, Linux distro, let's say Ubuntu, Mint, Debian, Manjaro, and so on, each distro has to maintain their own flow of doing a repository. And then they even have different programs. Like on Manjaro, you use Yum. On the Debian ones, Ubuntu, Mint, Debian, Pure OS, all that, they use APT. And even though it semi-works the same, if you actually did some serious work on Linux, you will find the real problem. The real problem is that the versions of the software are not the same. So every different distro has a different version because somebody didn't maintain a copy. Or somebody didn't, take the correct drivers from mainline Linux. And so there's something wrong with the flow. If you actually did some serious programming at the level that I did, I mean, it was so difficult to do it because you can't even run something very basic because the apps didn't work. So, I even run something basic, like somebody told me, why don't you run DaVinci Resolve? This is a video editor program, kind of like Adobe Premiere Pro. Because DaVinci Resolve works on Linux, works on Windows, in theory, except it didn't run. I couldn't run Windows DaVinci Resolve on any of those platforms, including a Mac, with so many bugs. And the reason is usually because repositories are not updated. So it's kind of a pain. And, so because of this, it's very difficult to get people to do simple things. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of such a basic thing with Linux. OpenVPN. So you want to install a VPN on Ubuntu. It already comes with OpenVPN and Network Manager. It's already pre-programmed in there, so you just go to settings and you can set up import your VPN info in there and you'll be fine, right? Well, guess what? Mint doesn't have it. Mint does not pre-install Network Manager, which is the GUI that's in settings. They don't. It's not pre-installed in Manjaro. It's like, what the zuck? I mean, obviously it's not pre-installed in Debian either. So because of this, people will ask for tech support and say, I need to install OpenVPN. How do we do it? And it's like, what the zuck? I mean, what distro? Because then you have to know, oh, in this distro, you do it this way and that. Well, I don't have enough tech support people, for example, to do that. I mean, it's different for every single one. That is what kills Linux. To be honest with you, that is what kills Linux. How do I recommend Linux to people when I can't even say, oh, this is how you install a VPN? I can't even do that. Can't even do that. I can't even give simple instructions because it's so different. And then and that's because they install different kinds of programs in every single one. So maybe I have to come up with a generalized solution for that, but it's very hard to do. So for that reason, it's hard to push people to go to Linux because it's not realistic to have them do that, and then they can't help themselves. So a little bit of skill is required to do Linux. Some people are complaining, so many topics I'm covering right now. Some people are complaining about Ubuntu because Ubuntu is starting to collect more data than they used to. And for that reason, they're now calling Ubuntu like a spy company, just like Microsoft. It's a little bit overstated. I mean, seriously, Ubuntu is not really a spy machine. It doesn't really track locations. Yeah, they want to count their users and all that. It's not. It's in the Linux world is unique because they're collecting more information than any other Linux distro. But it doesn't really compare to Windows, Google, Android, or iOS. We're not even the same ballpark. So I wouldn't really worry too much about it. Yes, if you're concerned, you can use some other distro if you are willing to, if you understand how to do kind of the stuff that I'm talking about. But one of the advantages of Ubuntu is that it's consistent. So you can train people to use Ubuntu and it will always be the same because it's one consistent thing. So for newbies, I always say use Ubuntu. Then I don't have to guess about how things work. But if you're not a newbie, no, feel free to go with a less spying, OS distro on Linux. That's fine. You can do that. Do we have beat the dead horse to? Okay. Do we have beat dead horse to death? Okay. Let me. Yes, MS invested in the Linux Foundation, which is even worse. Yeah, Microsoft invested in the Linux Foundation. So I was going to talk about Microsoft. Yes, I was going to talk about Microsoft again. There's just so many topics here. Okay, next topic is Microsoft and Android. So I don't know if you noticed, but Windows 11 will run a virtual machine running the Android runtime. Android runtime, or used to be known as Dalvik, the prior Dalvik engine, which you can actually find on it in Linux. There's an Android runtime Dalvik also. I forget the name of the platform now on Linux. I think it begins with A. Somebody might know. So that is interesting. If you can run Android apps on Windows 11, that's actually going to be very, very good for Android. Now understand what we're saying here. Windows 11 doesn't have Google Apps. Windows 11 doesn't have Google Apps. So the question is, will they force you to install Google Apps on the Apple runtime? This we have to find out. Because if Google Apps are not installed on the Apple runtime, the Android runtime, the Dalvik virtual machine, then it will be like a de-Google phone. So this is very interesting. I'm very interested to see how this actually works. If it's just a plain runtime like the one they have on Linux. On Linux, you're not required to have Google anything. You just load the app, and if it doesn't have a Google service, it's, So we'll see if they can actually, how is how is Microsoft handling the Google services? Do they have like a micro G thing, or how? I'm so curious, guys. I don't know how it works, but I'm curious, because if they do this right, or somebody reprograms it to do it right, this could be amazing. It could be like the Google phone on a desktop. The Google phone on a desktop. I mean, if this actually is possible. Well, you know, can't have too high expectations here. Chances are they talk to Google and they say, well, let's come up with an agreement. You put Google stuff on an Android runtime and it's a win-win. So it's scary. So we don't know. We don't know. All I know is that it is a virtual machine. So it'll be very, very interesting to see. Because right now, even on Windows, you can run the development platform for Android, which is in fact what the Android runtime is. That's the development platform. So it already exists. They just have to take away all the development stuff, and the runtime already exists on Android. So if it runs in the same limited way as the Android development platform, this could be good, because some limited apps, and you don't need to run everything, just some limited things. That would be fantastic. So, and then if that happens, well, Windows 11 might get favor. Windows 11 might actually be a good thing. I'll find out for you soon, one of these days. Okay. Probably towards the end of the year, when Windows 11 is fully released, because I don't know if that stuff is available in the beta version. So I'm downloading the beta version, but I don't know if it's going to be in that release. And to be honest, I'm not so up to date on Windows anymore. I don't really do the beta program on that. So, but it wouldn't be nice to have some options. What if we can run a Microsoft Surface Go and then do some of those Android apps on there, where we can at least do mobile things but not be subject to the Wi-Fi scanning and all of that? It would be fantastic if that, if we can do something like that. So, all you know is your vehicle warranty is about to expire. What does that have to do with anything? VPN cannot hide your location. VPN hides your IP address. That's a very common question, by the way. VPN hides your IP address. Now, what does that have to do with location? Location is a separate feature. Wi-Fi triangulation. Wi-Fi triangulation is a separate network traffic. On a browser, let's say Chrome, it goes, well, on all of them, it goes to Google. On Apple, it goes to Apple. But on all the other ones like Firefox and Chrome, it goes to Google. And then Google gives you the GPS position based on the Wi-Fi triangulation, based on reporting the Wi-Fi routers near you. So that's the principle to why was I talking about that? Now I forgot. Somebody was asking a question, and I was did it have anything to Windows 11? I actually forgot why I was talking about that. Maybe I'll remember later. Ask if I have old free monitors pushing YouTube to a TV from my phone by using Chromecast. Does this make my phone vulnerable? No. Chromecast is just radio frequency. No, I don't think that's a short distance RF. No, I don't think you have to worry about Chromecast. Did I miss that super chat? Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about Chromecast. You do have to worry about Fire TV because of the voice recognition. What do you mean with Windows is open? I fail to see how there's any guarantee Microsoft does not Wi-Fi triangulate in the back end. as I mentioned to you, Microsoft does not have infrastructure for back end unless they rent it. They don't have that data, and the reason is they don't have devices with GPS. So Microsoft doesn't have Wi-Fi triangulation data. They have to buy it from somebody else. Okay, the API, and any programmer that wants to access Wi-Fi location, whatever, can check the API of Microsoft to see how that triangulation works. So if it's such a thing exists. So they can't do Wi-Fi scanning, as I said, because it doesn't exist on the device. So I'm just giving you a comparison. Yes, Linux, no doubt, doesn't have that because it's open source. Windows doesn't have that because they don't have the infrastructure for it because they never collected that. Apple has it for sure, and Google has it for sure. So this is very definite marks. If you're going to make a choice, there's a grade. You know, Apple, Google. Apple might be worse in terms of this. Okay, because there's a way to turn it off on Google. Because Apple's may be on the chip, in which case we can't turn it off. Microsoft, it doesn't have anything in a chip. It doesn't have any of that. It's not on BIOS. They don't have the infrastructure to collect that data because they don't have a GPS. So Windows machines don't do location tracking in that same way. They just do Wi-Fi triangulation. So that's pretty clear. So they have no reason to do it. I mean, it's a big expense to do Wi-Fi scanning. And, you know, that's not their realm. So, okay, so it's not in their realm. So, yeah, they could, in theory, rent that data or use reverse IP lookup that they can rent. But they themselves are not the collectors of that data. So, because of that, they're very easy to stop. It's very easy to stop everything in Microsoft because it's all open. Open enough. It's not open source, but it's open enough. I work with Windows. You can tweak so many things in it. It's partly related to the corporate market. The corporate, if you work in enterprise Windows like I did, the corporations expect to have full control of Windows. Otherwise, they'd say to Microsoft, "Zuck you, we're going to dump you and go to Linux." So Microsoft has to be very careful of the stuff they put into each machine. Yes, their IME, you know, that was IME, or Intel Management Engine, was actually put in there for corporate use. Corporate use. So, see, they have to bow to what corporations want. Corporations wanted IME. They didn't want location tracking. They wanted IME. So IME is on there. But normal people in a normal home network don't have to worry about IME. You cannot be attacked with IME in a home network. You can be attacked by IME if you're in a corporate network. So if you're in a corporate network, somebody could, in fact, take over your computer in a corporation. Yes, because you know you're an internal network controlled by IT. The IT staff can control your computer. That is correct, and they have the authorization and all the codes from Intel to do so. That is not true of your home computer because the way to access your computer, those ports are going to be firewalled. The firewall will block them. In case you don't know what IME is, or Intel Management Engine, what it is that your Intel computers, specific chip models, they took it out of consumer Intel processors since trying to remember, since 8th gen, I think, maybe even 7th gen. They removed it on some models, and now the Intel Management Engine is just in the workstation and the server models. It's not on the consumer laptop models. So if you have a laptop, chances are it no longer has vPro IME. So the risk for that is that there are two chips on your computer. So this is your big Intel chip, and included in the Intel chip is a tiny IME chip. So there's actually two computers, and they're connected to the same network, and it bypasses the power switch. So it's actually bypassing power, this IME chip. So you can actually have full control of all devices, including reading the hard disk and all that, from the IME chip. That's why it's very, 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 very deadly. So, so that's why IME is kind of scary, because it's like a computer controlling the other computer. So some desktops have it, and if you want to know for sure, it's very easy to find out. What you do is you find your CPU model. You go to About in your system About on your Windows, and find out the chip model. For example, the chip I'm using on my laptop is a 10875H. Then you go to Intel and search for the features of the chip 10875H, and then look in the feature list for vPro, because vPro has IME. So vPro is the main feature set for corporate feature set that includes IME. Intel Management Engine is IME, or otherwise also part of the vPro. So vPro, I don't know what V stands for, but you know, maybe Virtual Control Pro. I don't know. So that whole thing is called this enterprise feature. It's called vPro, and then IME is part of that. So you can't actually search for IME easily because it's not mentioned on there, because it's part of vPro. So all you have to do is say, does my chip have vPro or not? If it has vPro, you're zucked in a corporate environment. You're not going to be zucked in a home environment. Okay? You can't. Somebody would have to be on your network to access you. You can't be controlled from outside the internet. From an internet connection, you cannot reach vPro. It has to be an internal network. Okay, so let's not panic about it. But anyway, I did panic about it. So my computers, every computer I bought, I always checked the chip to make sure that it doesn't have vPro. So I've been buying that. I believe some high-end Dell models, some high-end Lenovo models still have vPro. Some corporate models, workstation level. What is the chip that's used for servers? Xeon? What is it? Something like that? That has IME. And allows, the corporate people to reset the computer. It allows them to do, let's say you're going to a server company. Let's say you're on Linode and you want to reboot the computer. You can control all that with IME. Okay? So IME likely exists on those. Now, so IME gives you access to the drive. So you do have a responsibility. If you don't want somebody on IME to access the drive, you can encrypt a drive, in which case IME won't be able to access the drive except to reformat it and such. It won't be able to access the drive. You encrypt it. Okay, i7 second generation 8-core. IME existed since a long time ago. My gosh. 2005? Maybe? The early stages of it. And then get more robust by 2007. This is just from my recollection. I could be wrong. But that's my early recollection, is the first versions of IME was around there, like near when the iPhone started. And then they made it more robust into what is the current version. They're very secretive with IME, so you can't really find much from IME unless you have a contract with Intel. So I don't have access to that since I don't work in an enterprise anymore. I used to work in enterprise systems, so I used to develop the software for enterprise, but I haven't been in that business for so long, and I haven't been in hardware for much longer. I really have been in software. Why is Bill Gates evil? Because he's weird. You know, I haven't talked to Bill Gates. I've encountered him many times. You know, like 2 feet away, many times. But I've never actually had a conversation with him. But he is weird, huh? Getting weirder every day. Getting weirder every day. Everything is tracking you. Let's see. What is the best way to learn computer programming? /Jason, it really is about drive. What does it take to learn a computer program? You get a book. And you start, you know, start playing around with it and do trial and error until you figure it out. How do you think I worked it out? I said, I'm going to start to, you know, long time ago. I did study a bit of programming in college, but very little of it. And the rest is self-taught. So back in the day when I was learning C language, which is my main programming language, I said, okay, how do you do this? And C was, you know, back in the day, there were no books. There was only one book back in the day, which was the Kernighan and Ritchie book, the basic C book, and that was it. There was no actual instructions anywhere. And then you have to understand this concepts of memory and all this, and it's like it's pretty crazy because there's nothing, no basis. Then you just do the exercises and you play with it until you figure it out. And one thing about programming is once you figure it out once, you say, now you understand how that logic works, and then you do it. I've always been self-taught. I've never gone to any programming class of any sort. I've built my own. I actually wrote some of my own programming languages. I've never been to any programming class for anything. I only learned one programming language in school, which I never used in real life, and that was COBOL. So I learned COBOL in college, never used it in real life. Nobody uses COBOL. So yeah, so my first stint as a programmer on mainframes was using Fortran. So I used Fortran, and then from there was assembly, C, basic. Those were like the, you know, back in the old days, those were the starting languages. So you said COBOL at 3 companies? Yeah, I never used it. So I'm primarily a C programmer, and you know, you can say C++, but I'm really I started, you know, with C. C++ is of course written in C. So yeah, so it's funny. I get here on YouTube. Some people were like looking at you know, I wrote Brax.me in PHP. When I wrote Brax.me in PHP, I've never done PHP in my life, and it's funny. All these you know, young stupid programmers come to me, attack me, say you don't know how to use PHP. Your code is crappy and whatever. And it was like, zuck you. I've never used PHP in my life, and I wrote that whole app in PHP, and I based it on whatever documentation they had at the time, and now they're saying, well, you should not have written it that way. Well, zuck you. That was what the instruction was at the time. Well, the experts are, yeah, because maybe he went to school and did some theoretical things with it. I did not do that. I just looked at it and said, okay, let me program and get it done. So I got it done. And yeah, PHP is not my main language. I'm a C programmer. However, PHP is similar to at least in format, with less control than C. But C is very difficult. C is very tedious to work with. C is very, very difficult to work with. So in modern times, if you want the same kind of power as C, but you do not have the energy to go down to the C level of dealing with memory and all that, then the program of choice is actually Python. So one of the things I wrote, one of the things I did, storytelling time here. One of the things I did was I built a camera app. I did a security camera, and which I sold and have. So I built the security camera here, which I don't sell this anymore. But I built a security camera, and one of the things that I had to do was write the software for it, and the main code is actually in Python. And where I needed to get more access to the chip, because this runs a Raspberry Pi, and I needed access to the to the innards of the circuitry in there to control the Raspberry Pi, and for that I use C. So that's a nice thing, is you can build a module in C and call it from Python. And so, Python is from a device control basis. Python is one of the easiest ways to control a device. PHP and some of those new frameworks are made for server use. Running websites and such, which is a little bit different. But for controlling a device, the programming language I would recommend is Python. So if you want to learn that, then that's what I would recommend. Are you running C on a Pi? Yeah, you can compile C. Yeah, that's what I did. You compile a C program on a Pi. It's the C programming language is built into Linux. If you're running Linux, it's written in C, C++. So you can take the source code of Linux, which is written in C, C++, compile on the spot. The compiler is built into every Linux. That's one of the beauties of Linux, actually, if you understand that. So if you understand C code, then you can actually make Linux programs. So, although Python runs on Linux, but if you want to go low level to the OS level, then you have to learn C. Okay, so Super Chat Miss Zero, cool. Can you explain LTE and why I would use a VPN if using LTE and no Wi-Fi? You do not have, well, LTE, and thank you, Mysticulous, from getting all that. LTE people can be spied on only by the ISP. And the ISP already knows your IP address because they gave you the IP address. So, but they can't see most of your traffic. An ISP can't see most of your traffic, since nowadays most traffic is HTTPS. So a few years ago they could see some traffic. Nowadays it's very, very limited. Most of the traffic they can see, a ISP can see, is related to DNS. So, and then Google took care of that by saying routed through private DNS to Google. So Google's trying to centralize that DNS. Firefox is routing it to Cloudflare. So a lot of that is being hidden now from the ISP. So ISPs really don't have much access to much data anymore. So do you need a VPN with LTE when you're using LTE? Not necessarily, because your IP address is the location that I told you is attached to location that people are selling. And they can't sell that if it's LTE, because the IP addresses are shared. There's a pool of people using a shared list of IP addresses. And so your IP address changes constantly. For that reason, it's not really a threat to third parties. It's only a threat from your ISP. If you use a VPN with your LTE, then obviously you're safe from the ISP as well, but meaning the carrier. But otherwise, if that's not much of an issue, because it's lower risk than it was before, the main threat is from third parties collecting your IP address, then I would say a VPN is not 100% needed for normal everyday use. When on LTE, it's needed for DSL. It's needed for your home. you must have a VPN for home use. If you're using DSL, you need a VPN. No choice. I have to use a VPN when I'm on DSL. Okay? I'm trying to set up metastatic nodes. Any thoughts? I don't have any thoughts. I don't even know what a metastatic node is. Is that some sort of private networking thing? Another kind? Like I2P is another one of those. I2P, you know, another private network within a network. Okay, so just generally speaking, the reason you need a VPN is to protect your IP address. The only way to protect location is to block location permissions on Windows or even Linux. Block location permissions. That is independent of the VPN. But if you don't block your VPN, your location will be found and sold with the IP address. So you must have it. You must have a VPN. Of course, I have a VPN service. It's on Braxme. So thank you for those who support my VPN service. And please consider my VPN service. I also sell VPN routers. Now, VPN routers are great because what happens is you do not have to set up the VPN on individual devices. It's so easy. You plug it into your network, you connect to the Wi-Fi, you're on a VPN. No other action needed. If you have a lot of devices, you must have a VPN router. So that's what Brax router is. What should you buy first? Number one, the Google phone, I would say. Number two is a VPN. And then number three is a Brax router. Okay, so we're close to running out of time here. 73 Ben, so Ben is anticipating my departure here. Is a VPN like a direct line to a server? Yes, that's encrypted. A VPN is an encrypted direct line to the VPN server. And so everyone exits from the VPN server. So for example, for me, from my VPN server, let's say 400 of us are using one VPN server. In my case, I don't put that many people on one server. You rotate, so it's randomly assigned. So you may, for example, if you're using one region, I may circulate you to, 7 to 10 servers. Okay, so if you're like going to Dallas, I have my ISP in Dallas, there would be like 7 to 10 servers in there, and then you would rotate between those IP addresses. So let's say there's several hundred of you using Dallas, and so you circulate among those. So then it would be your IP would change slightly within that area, and then you mix it up. Sometimes you go one server, sometimes you go to the next, and so all of you exit from Dallas. So any external website, if they check where you're coming from, it'll say Dallas, even though you're connecting from LA. Okay, I'll check out that metastatic. I don't know what that is. Thank you for telling me about it. I can't do videos on cryptocurrencies. I'm going to get banned on YouTube here. I don't know why. I don't know what their problem is with crypto. So, but a lot of crypto channels have been banned from YouTube. So it's not my area. So I used to do a lot of crypto videos, but there's other people who do that. Okay, so I'm not gonna do that. To give driver remote view of vehicle surroundings. Tesla rolls out Sentry mode. Is that a new thing, Sentry mode? When your Tesla is asleep, it's already doing a Sentry mode with all the cameras. So you can actually get a round view already of that. That's not new. It's been around a long time. Why don't you talk about ThreadX operating systems? I don't know what ThreadX operating system is. Another new thing. Okay. I mean, I don't know every operating system. Somebody can make, you know, a new Linux-based operating system that nobody would know. Okay. Remote security mode. That's been around. I'm not sure. That's been around. That's been around a long time. It's nothing new. You mean sentry mode to sentry your house? Well, it can function like that. Anyone approaches your Tesla will record it on video. WireGuard is another version of a VPN protocol that's supposedly a little bit faster than OpenVPN. I may support it at some point. It just you know, you got to worry about, you know, the interface to the clients and how reliable it is. Okay. You don't need SneakerNet email. You don't need any of that. You use Braxmail. So we offer Braxmail. So that's on my website. If you need to create a mail account that does not spy on you, then come join us on Braxmail. And then use Gmail for throwaway accounts. Okay, so Sentry mode allows drivers to see car surroundings. New Sentry mode. New Sentry mode? I can already see the car surroundings with Sentry mode. I totally don't understand. I got to check out if there's anything new because, you know, you can check out car surroundings with Sentry mode already. Braxmail is $50 a year. And it gives you currently five domains you can use. So like Eagle Source at braxmail.net, Eagle Source at email1.me, Eagle Source at braxsecure.net, Eagle Source at brax.live, and whatever other domains I have. There's 5 of them. Okay, does China backdoor people? Sure, I'm sure they do, because the 3-letter agencies backdoor people on Cisco routers as an example. Okay, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. Now, I want to just get some ideas. You know, I did the Apple video, and you guys didn't like it. You guys didn't like it. I'd like to get some feedback about, you know, what makes videos successful. I don't actually know. I do a random topic on outgoing firewalls based on some comment here, and then it was good. And then I do a video talking about Apple, and which is actually a very important topic, and it's not good. You know, nobody watches it. So I don't know. I do an email video, which is very important, and nobody watches that. Kind of like the Apple video. But I talk, you know, about some general thing, and then people watch it. Please give me some input. I'd like to hear from you guys. This is one of the main important things about a live stream, is so I can talk to you. Okay, thank you very much. Leave the comments in the, you know, at the end of the video. Not in the chat, but in the end of the video. After we end this, if you have suggestions on what I should discuss in future topics. Thank you, guys. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Have a happy Halloween.